Good morning and welcome to Kusile Breakfast Show. Siyabonga kakhulu ukuthi namhla ekuseni ngeze kuvuka nathi ngolesithathu the 15th of February 2023 nivuselako ngilungelele emakagula sesama usiniphilile lapho khona nisibukela khona lo mhla ekuseni. Sifiso, good morning.
Morning Lulu, how are you?
Good.
I'm okay.
Sephelile vibe ya Valentine's sesibuyile.
Yeah, sesikhuluma Valentine kakhulu. Le foreign concept ye Valentine siyabona nyelanga. Yeah, it's a Wednesday lungelele. I think for me personally it's one of malanga that I look forward to ehlelweni njengoba sikhulumisa indzaba lenkulu indzaba yetempilo. Siyathi ukuthi live la kangwane nje linemgomo weku-achieve universal health for onke emaswati la khona lapha eveni. So ke ngolesithathu nje senda sathatha sinqumo sikusile breakfast show ukuthi sita focus site indzabeni tetempilo just to maximize lwati lwetempilo esiveni semaswati. Tinhlangothi letahlukene nje lamhla ehlelweni nga 6:30 sikhulumisa indzaba lemcwa kakhulu indzaba yesifo se-tuberculosis, i-HIV kanye nesayake ye-pregnant mother to child transmission. Satikelo ukuthi the Ministry of Health, its significant progress has been made in the implementation of collaborative tuberculosis HIV activities. It says the uptake of HIV testing services, which include antiretroviral therapy and cotrimoxazole preventative therapy, remains above 95%. However, the emergence of drug-resistant TB has posed some challenges in the control of TB in Eswatini. What is being done to improve the management of these healthcare issues? Lamatsathu lesengobalile HIV, TB, HIV ibe transmitted from pregnant mother to child. On the studio guest joined on with Dr. Debra Vambe, lokamba khona itiko letempilo kusichazela kabandi nge-project review labayendile sitakhumbula ukuthi bayicala le project ngaminyaka wa 2018 kubukeka nje ukuthi bangadilwa kanjani itifo letintsathu leti ekutheni tinganzi even. She's joining us nekusifocustela nje ngoba sisazivile phela ukuthi batawuqala lenye futhi i-program letawuba iminyaka lengu-4 letawena nje siqinisekisa ukuthi noma ngabe sesiwentile lama significant strides ekulweni nayo HIV kwanza kwe-HIV eveni nekulwa ne-TB nekulwa nje ne-pregnancy mother to child transmission. Kusaqala ke leminyaka lomusha iminyaka nje lemisha yinto inhlelo ababuke kudenda aqinisekisa ukuthi more progress is being made. Dr. Debra Vambe joins us nga 6:30 kusichazela kabanti.
Njalo mbukele bese ukuthi nga 7:30 sidabe sikhulumisana na Dr. Kusile Mabunza, who is a dermatologist etiko letempilo nje basivetile ukuthi namhla sibuka dona nje tindzaba tetempilo. Namhla ke na Dr. Mabunza sikhuluma ngendzaba ye-skin whitening. Indzaba lenkulu ke lena lesendiwa mhlaba wonke. Skin whitening is the use of cosmetic products to reduce the amount of melanin noma ke pigment in the skin to make it appear more lighter. I-trend ke lena leseyithume mhlaba wonke. Practice lena ke yimvo leyaqala eminyakeni leminingi leyedlulile and labanye bayibita nge-skin lightening noma skin whitening, bleaching. Kanti ke in many cultures skin lightening is associated with beauty and better prospects in terms of employment. Labanye bathi skin lightela ukuthi bakhona ekucashwa emisebentini, labanye bakwendela lokho ukuthi bakhona ukungena emendweni, kanti labanye nje bakwendela ngokuthi sekunedwe inkulumo nje ukuthi mangabe umnyama awusiko muhle. So kungako sebathi khanza sebathi brightenisha skin sabo. And according to reports, an article published by the CNN last year, women account to 80% of sales worldwide and men account to 20%. And also global market was estimated at $8 billion in 2020 and is projected to 11.8 billion in 2026. So siyabe sikhulumisana naye Dr. Mabunza kuvuka ukuthi angabe vele ama side effects in the long run skin lightening kube sekwendekani la sikhumeni because labanye sibabone isifiso sabavuvuke ebuso sabavuke ama lips ngeke ukuthi bayathi jova benda lokwana lokho. So we'll be speaking to Dr. Mabunza today kuvuka ukuthi ngabe vele mhlamba ama effects in the long run ekwende labo skin lightening bese kwendekani la sikhumbeni sakho namhla ekseni nga 7:30.
I'm excited for that one Ngelele. Ngiyafuna lokumuva Dr. Mabunza Mabunza asichazela kabantu ukuthi basho ukuthini nabala bathi libala lelifana nelama lisilo lelihle mina nje ngikhanza kumuhle kakhulu for bleaching into lengingayuze niyini so ngiyafuna lokuyiva le conversation there. I think that's one of a very topical issue mhlaba wonke jikelele ngoba siyakubona la ngephandle we do really see it and it is a growing concern amongst bantu labadzala nebantu nje labangabelieveli kokwa njengoba sibona ukuthi batkhanza sebagula. So I'm excited for that one. It is 5 minutes after 6 dabahlola imarket nasibuya sithatha nizaba tethuta lapha ekhaya.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3# and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Athimze sinimukele sakuvusela nawo losanza kuzivulela sitangena 1973. Selengosi Mswati wesithathu sesithumise ukubambisana lokukhona emkhathisini welibandla lemasala i-Seventh Day Adventist Church nahulumende. Ngonyama ithile libandla libe neligalelo elikhulu ekufukuleni imitamo yahulumende ekuthuthukisa inhlalakahle yesive. Silo siphefumule ngeliphimbo lempana nkosi lonkhokhela emcimbini wokwemukela mengameli welibandla lemasala mhlaba wonke umfundisi Ted Wilson lofike kuleli.
Live leSwatini liseluhleni lwemave tifundza letahlukahlukene vekatini leAfrika. Tilibandla lemasala letivakashelwe ngumengameli walelibandla mhlaba wonke, General Conference President umfundisi Dr. Ted Wilson, lokuqale ngekuvakashela live laseZambia nelive laseKenya. Mengameli losingetfwe ngowakakhe umelusikati Nancy Wilson uselambeni lwakhe lokuqala kuleli. Noko luvakasho lwakhe lwesibili kuthi lwentiwe ngumengameli walelibandla mhlaba wonke kusukela lasungulwa kuleli lelibandla nga-1920 endzaweni yasembukwane esifundzeni saseshiselweni. Kanzi lwekuqala lwaba ngeminyaka wanga-1989 lapho khona kwefika mengameli Nelson Wilson longuyise wakhe Dr. Ted Wilson. Emavuso Exhibition and Trade Center emalunga ekhomfa yelive leSwatini alalele inkulumo nenshumayelo yamholi wawo luwatiwa ngekutitfoba noma ahola libandla lelinemalunga latigidzi letingamashumi mhlaba wonke. Ngaphandle kwaloyo lebekamelele silo semhlaba ingwenyama lomcimbi bawungenelwe nayindvuna yetasekhaya umvanenkosi Lindiwe nemazinyane embube lekube umvanenkosi Bandzile nemvanenkosi Temtsimba nemvanenkosi Tiyanza. Ingwenyama yeMaswati ithi kubambisana kwahulumende nelibandla lemasala kufukule imitamo yakhe hulumende ekuthuthukisa tinhlelo tenhlalakahle yesive.
Government is also aware of the collaboration in the education and health sector where human and financial resources are shared with government, supporting the church's initiatives. Your church has been a good corporate citizen. The recent COVID-19 pandemic also affected the way all sectors conduct their business to try and minimize the spread of COVID. It suffices to say your church was compliant to the guidelines laid down by the state as advised by WHO. Another area of collaboration is the strong messages that your church, through its programs, fights gender-based violence, thus proclaiming the End It Now campaign. Government is also pleased that the church takes serious issues of protecting women and children. I'm aware that periodically the church brings support to these groups. Also encouraging is your church's effort to promote skills development and self-sufficiency. One notable program is the Adventist Disaster Relief Program. The Adventist Church has been running in the country in collaboration with other government and NGOs programs in times of disasters, like in floods, droughts, training in HIV and AIDS itself.
Yena-ke Mengameli Wilson uthi njengoba luvakasho lwakhe lulufisha unesifiso sekuphinze abuye even leSwatini lokulive lathi linemoya wenthokomalo nekuthula.
We will take from this visit something so deep in our hearts that it will never be removed until we see each other in heaven. The graciousness of the country, the warmth of the people, the peaceful atmosphere that we sense, the foundation built upon the Word of God, principles that carry you forward into daily life that are based upon principles from the throne room of heaven.
Indvuna itasekhaya umvane ngosilindiwe ivakalise lethemba lokuthi Mengameli Wilson utawutenetisa ngenthokomalo yelive asekuleli.
Dr. Wilson, we thank God for your safe arrival to the Kingdom of Eswatini, and we trust that despite your brief stay, you will enjoy a royal experience.
Emakhosi yelive ke endlulisele tipho kuye Mengameli newakakhe.
Here, this is the container, traditional container.
Ngalonjalo libandla libese seletfulela emakhosi tipho. Libandla ke njalo lendlulisele tipho kuye indvuna nakiwo emazinyane esilo semhlaba ingunyama. Libika kwethu indzabeni ngisandile Makhanya emavuso exhibition and trade center kaManzini.
Emakhosi isekamemetele ngalokusemthethweni isigaba sekucala semkhosi webuganu walonyaka. Lomkhosi utawucala esigodlweni ebuhleni kusukela mhla ti-24 kuya kumhla ti-26 kulesetulu. Simemetelo sikhishwe indvuna yelithango esifundzeni sakaHoho lothobhinzi manze ngekuthunywa ngemakhosi.
Lalela sikutshele tindzaba letibuye enkosini. Uyeswana uthokandaba luthango lonke lakaHoho aluphelele esigodlweni ebuhleni luphelele nebugani balo enyangeni lesetulu kuNdlovane mhla tingamashumi 24 yothi mhla tingamashumi engomeni yakhe mhla tingamashumi 26 ayachithwa amabutho abophezu kwemkhono. Usho njalo umsati omnyama kubakala uthuli ulot mandaba sembelembeleni ulot mandaba semampontweni ayethe wena phakathi phezu komkhono ngekuthunywa ngawe emakhosi elithangweni ngemgcibelo kubhekeke ukuthi ilithango livunule lihiya leli orange bese ngelisondo livunula lihiya lelibovu luthango ke kufanele ukuthi lubonakale ukuthi luhle kahle luvunule lokufananako litoba luhle lihlobise lomsebenzi wemakhosi ayethe wena waphakathi
Liphini ilandvunankhulu uThemba Masuku lithi uhulumende solo uyachubeka nekubuka umonakalo lodalwe timvula. Masuku uthi umonakalo lomkhulu wenteke inyakatfo entshiselweni kanye nenyakatfo yaselibonjeni. Masuku bekakhulumana ketfula emhlanganweni wetindzaba ngesikhatsi etfula umbiko wetindzawo uhulumende lativakashele ngelesibili.
Lesikubonile ke nyalo ukuthi umonakalo lomkhulu waletimvula wenteke Northern Ho kusho enyakatho naho kuphindze kube Northern Lubombo kusho njalo nibonile nje le tindzawo entabo Maphiven naletinye vele mkhulu lo monakalo kusho letimvula lato tinele ngalapho ngale ngeshiselweni lebesikubona kusemasimini nje lapha bokhanza ukuthi kunalamanti ngoba bathi na itolo line kakhulu ukhanza ke ukuthi emasim lamanye lokudla kuvele kuyandanda nje imimbila lelo bese isinzile kulo monakalo welanga lamaviki lamathathu lebesihlaseleke ngawo ukhanza ukuthi leyo mbila bese wetama kumila ingabe mhlambe tibhito noma tindlubu mantongomane nasibuka la itulu ngoba le helicopter beyisonzela phansi la sibona khona ukuthi ungathi kunekulukhuni kepha ke lesingakusho nje ukuthi basekhona nalabanye bethu kanti lababukako ngoba mhlambe nalatulu khona tihosha lobongeke ukuthi itsinze kepha ke sisetawu buya sihlanganise
Tihlobo tebantfu labadzala lesabasishiyile emhlabeni sebangacala kufaka ticelo tamasingcwabisane kubo sonhlalakahle etifundeni tonke telive. Lokhu kulandzela kwekutsi mabhalane lomkhulu ehhovisini eliphindvunankhulu uMelusi Masuku amemetele loku lapho achaze khona ukuthi isikhwama sesincemphetelo i-Motor Vehicle Accident Fund ngiso lesitawubuka kusebenta kwalesikhwama.
Uhulumende ke evikini leliphelile uthathe isinqumo sokuthi ukuhlangabeza abantu labadzala labahluphekile uhulumende utawukhipha imali lengange letintsatfu which is 3,000 emalangeni sinemahhovisi ke la achithakele lonke lelive abosondlola kahle siyacela ke isivele kwekuthi sisibambise kwekuthi nangabe kuvele kuhlupheka mhlawumbe kulelo khaya lelithite bavele bahambe bayovela emahhovisini abosondlola kahle lakuvutane nabo batawufike ke lapho baniketwe ama-application forms labatawatfola baphindze ke baniketwe ke neluhla lwema-documents lokufuna ukuthi bawalethe ehhovisini leliphini landvunankulu kuto-uprova lokuthi vele lona losasishiyile bekuwumuntu lowabekahluphekile. Sithethe isinqumo futhi sekwekuthi nangabe ukhona-ke lowabenawo yena mhlawumbe umshwalensi njengoba nathi nonke ukuthi cishe abantu labanyenti lapha ekhaya sebanawo umshwalense bantu labanjengalabo angeke balithole lo sito lo.
Litiko letekulima lithi intsengo yamanyolo ikhombisa kwehla kancane nayicatsaniswa neminyaka lophelile ngako liyetsemba kutsi balimi batawetama kulima tilimo letisengalimeka kulesikhatsi lokuvete kumabhalane lomkhulu kulelitiko ngesikhatsi yachaza ngesimo setekulima kuleli.
Ukraine was a major supplier yama-fertilizers. So kwase kusifaka ke enkingeni ngokuthi sesenda njani sigcine siba forced ukuthi sibuke ama-alternatives ngokuthi singabathola phela bo-fertilizer siwabukile ke ama-options sibe nenhlanhla ke lokuthi lempina icala we still had a little bit of time before the planting season sase sesiyabuka ke ama-alternatives lamanye ukuthi singathola bo-fertilizer sase siyabathola ke vele umuntu nje angasho lokuthi ke the hardest hit vele kulaba balimi even kube ngilama small scale farmers kwabonakala ke lokuthi vele sitawuba nayo lenkinga abanawo khona kulimi but lokwendekile lapho sivule le hectarage in the past besithi umuntu utawuniketwa inhlanyelo noma ema supplies for 1 hectare nasekhulisa ke ngokuthi singakuniketa for up to 3 hectares kwase kwenta ukuthi ke at least noma angakhona lama small scale farmers lalima mhlambe bo 1 hectare or even less at times laba lese bathathe for ema supplies a 1 2 3 hectares sebatawukhona kusikhava labo fertilizer bona basishayile kakhulu ngoba nasingabekisa nje lisaka lamanyolo belisuke ku800 emalangeni laya ku1400 sengikhona ke liphinzele ehla labuya phasi kancane so uyalithola nje letindzaweni ngabo 1100 noma 1200
Akulokunye lihhovisi leliphila ndvunankulu lecwayisa sive ngetigebengu lesetibhadalisa bogogo nabomkhulu imali tibayenga ngekuthi tibuya ngaphansi kwehlelo lelatiwa ngekuthi nguvela ngaphansi kwaleli hhovisi abhalane lomkhulu kulelitiko ukuthi kude imali bantfu labadzala kufanele bayibhadale ngaphansi kwaleli hlelo.
Lihhovisi leliphila ndvunankulu licale umkhankaso wekutfola kabanti imininingwane yebantfu labadzala ikakhulu labaholelwa nguhulumende. Mabhalane lomkhulu kuleli hhovisi meluzimasa ukuthi sekunetigebengu leseteba imali yesive tithi tisebenta ngaphansi kwalolu hlelo.
Kunayi exercise le ndiwa lihhovisi leliphini ndvunankulu la exercise yavela. Siva ke ukuthi kunabantu lababhadalisa abantu labadzala imali lenganga 120 emalangeni babathembisa ukuthi batabasida ukuze bakhona kungena kulolu hlelo lolusha lokubaholela abantu labadzala njalo ngenyanga sithi nje asixwayise sive ukuthi labantu labenda lo ukuthi lehhovisi leliphini landvunankulu asibati labakwendako ukukhiphisa sive imali lengaka asikwati akagunyatwa ngilo lehhovisi siyacela ke ukuthi sive sibanake labantu labenda lo siphinze futhi siba report emaphoyiseni laDvutane lesikwati kuthina ukuthi eminyakeni lophelile nasawutawuphela nje senda simemetelo sicela ukuthi bantu labadzala bavele emahhovisini laDvutane nabo abosonhlala kahle silungisela lolu hlelo lolusha lekubaholela njalo ngenyanga.
Mabhalane lomkhulu uthi labo labenda lokhu batawubhekana nemithetho. Etindzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Nelson Dlangamandla navuma inkosi Nzinisa Embabane.
Bengetulu kwa 460 bantfu labatsindzeke ngenxa yetimvula lebetisolotina kulamalanga lapha eVenim lokuvete ngumchumanisi besive nelibandla leliphunga tehlakalo wandile mavuso ngalesibili mavuso uthi netikolo tikhona letitsindzekile
lese sikutfolile ke as of itolo nje bekunene ukuthi bantfu lasebashile emhlabeni babili munye kutfolakala sugcotshwe indlu yalo litsaka lotfola ukuthi bese lina kakhulu yamgcoba kwase ukuthi bantfu noma tindlu lesetilimele tilinganiselwa ku92 bantfu ke lasebathikametwe ngilesi sehlakalo lesi saletimvula letina tingakhawuli balinganiselwa ku464 laba ke bekunene bantfu laba kutfola ukuthi basusiwe tindlini tabo ngendzaba ukuthi tindlu setilimele noma setiyanetha imifula ke bekunene ngete sayikhuluma le imifula igcwele lamanye amabloho asalimele emuke nawo lamandi lanemandla mhlawumbe kungaba kucela ke bekunene ukuthi sive asinake bekunene kakhulu etikolweni kakhulu ngoba kuleti tindzawo kuyabonakala ukuthi le mifula isengakehli lese sikwendile nje unyalo sesikhonile kusita abantu labalinganiselwa ku75 labaqhamuka emitini lengu15 sibasitile ngokuthi sibanikete emathende ukuthi uma liqhubeka lina bakhona ukuthi banganethwa nemaseli ke lesibita ngesilungu ngesimatarpaulins sema food parcels uthola ukuthi kudla nabo cooking oil tikolo mhlawumbe leti tsikabedekile ting107 ema road crossings la khona mhlambe kusuka umgwaqo lo gravel uyakutha noma la khona imigwaqo lengasawele khona in 24 emabloho lasalimele asithupha bese kuthi amabloho lathikabedekile ang 26
Sayitawutekwa ngalesine kuleli viki indzaba ilunga lephalamende lenkundla yakalobamba Alan Stewart. Stewart ufake isicelo sekutokela ngaphandle kulandzela ukuthi usamele kutekwe indzaba yakhe enkantolo yemacala lendlulisiwe lapho afuna ukuthi kuguculwe isijubo senkantolo lenkulu sekuthi advonse iminyaka lesihlanu ecaleni lekwetama kubulala. Stewart bekavele phambi kwelijaji zonke magagula.
Ngalesibili ingenile enkantolo lenkulu indzaba yelilunga lephalamende lenkundla yakalobamba Alan Stewart. Stewart ufake isicelo sekutokela ngaphandle asamele ukuthi indzaba yakhe itekwe yinkantolo yemacala lendlulisiwe. Le ndzaba ifika lapho nje lelilunga lephalamende lilahlwe licala lekwetama kubulala lekuthiwa walenda ngeminyaka wa 2010 esiteki. Stewart gwetshwa iminyaka lesihlanu, mibili yalengiswa kwathiwa kude nelithuba lekubhadala inhlawulo. Stewart uthi ucela kutokela ngaphandle nje kutekwa kwalendzaba enkantolo yemacala lendlulisiwe lapho afuna lesijubo siguculwe khona yintfo lengeke ibe nyalo nanyalo. Inkantolo ijube ukuthi lendzaba ayitekwe ngalesine kuleli viki njengobe nembuso uyasiphikisa sicelo sakhe. Inkantolo itsite ayikabuki isigaba saStewart loku ithi lendzaba ayitekwe ngalesine kodwa ibuke ukuthi lendzaba ingene ngesitifiketi lesiphutfumako. Kulendzaba Stewart umelelwe nguLinda Dlamini kanti lendzaba isembi kwelijaji zonke magagula. Tindzabeni teSwatini TV kubika Themkosi Mavimbela navuma inkosi Nzinisa enkantolo lenkulu.
Umphathi wenhlangano yengungu yemathemba noNhlanhla Dlamini uthi sesifikile isikhathi sekuthi indzaba yekuhlubetana sale yethulwa kumnikati wemuntfu. Dlamini uthi umoya wekubulalana sewufike esigabeni lesishacisako kungako sekudzingeka ukuthi uNkulunkulu angenelele. Dlamini bekakhuluma emthandazweni wasekuseni wekuthandazela ukuthi budlwangudlwangu kanye nekubulalana kuphele eveni.
Emalangeni lambalwa liphini landvunankulu Themba Masuku letfula isiveni ukuthi sekubulewe bantfu labang-88 etinyangeni letintsatfu nje kuphela. Labantfu kufaka ekhatsi labo lababulewe ngilabo labatsandzana nabo. Kungaleso sizatfu inhlangano yengungu yemathemba ibambisene nemsakato weliphimbo lelibandla basukumise umthandazo wekuthandazela kuphela kwebudlwangudlwangu kanye nekubulalana. Umphathi wenhlangano yengungu yemathemba noNhlanhla Dlamini uthi kubalulekile ukuthi netisebenti letisebenta leto tindzaba letibucayi nato tithandazelwe.
Umuntu akasiwo wethu besingatrainwa endzabeni yekukhokhela kodwa kukhokhela lokunguko lokungiko mbamba ngilokuqhamuka kusomandla. Nangaleli langa lamhla ka-14 February lesathi ukuthi ilanga lelithando bokhanza ukuthi kukhona loshonako and athi nakashona ashone ngesibhuku lesikhulu umangale ukuthi angabe vele emaswatini sekungeneni ngoba umphefumulo seyintfo lencane kakhulu sekufanana nje nenkhukhu lesebaleni lo vele nje uyithathe uyishumbule umphefumulo.
Sindisiwe Sifundza lohlukubeteke iminyaka lengu-22 emshadweni uthi-ke umsakato weliphimbo lelibandla kanye nenhlangano yengungu yemathemba imsite kakhulu ukuthi akhone kuba nelithemba njengoba bengumuntu lobesafuna kutibulala.
Swaga wahlale asiniketa luthando, swaga wakhipha nje inhlitiyo wayibeka emhlabeni wonke kokuthi wonke lovangazi ukuthi akekho umuntu lomlalelako akagijime aye kaSwaga, Swaga uvule iminyango.
Umfundisi Sizolwethu Dube uthi-ke kubalulekile ukuthi emaswati akhambise embili kuthula kuneludlame.
Pursue peace, not violence. Asikhona scripture nawufunza John 14:27 uthi peace I live with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be. Amen.
Bafundisi labanyenti bayikhulume kakhulu indzaba yekuthi kumcoka kakhulu ukukhulumisana ebudlelwaneni ikakhulu nakubantfu labathathene babese-ke bayihambisa embili indzaba yokuthi kubalulekile ukuthi umuntu ancike kakhulu kuye simakadze kunekuthi sive sincike emandleni aso. Etindzabeni kubika Sondomlangeni nginasimuva Shongwe sikaManzini.
tetemidlalo, inhlangano lengamele inhlangano tetemidlalo lapha eveni, iEswatini Sports and Recreational Council seyivetile ukuthi inhlangano letihlukahlukene tetemidlalo satiyachubeka nekuncoma emagama etingijimi letikhomba kuhamba embili lokubeke ukuthi tingenele umcimbi wema-National Sports Awards lokubheke ukuthi ubanjwe mhla ka-1 enyangeni letako. Ngokusho kwenhlangano ilanga lekugcina lekuncoma dona letingijimi kubheke ukuthi kuvalwe ngalesihlanu mhla ka-17 enyangeni lesetulu. Umsebenzi wama-Sports Awards wagcina kuba khona ngemnyaka wa-2019. Umsebenzi walonyaka losetulu utawufaka ekhatsi tingijimi letikhombe kuhamba embili eminyakeni lemibili leyendlulile kusukela ngemnyaka wa-2020 kuya eminyakeni wa-2022. Lemihlomelo ifaka ekhatsi ingijimi lahamba embili kubo babe kanye nabomake kanti nekubadlali labancane. Labo labatawuhamba embili kule mihlomelo batawuphinza batfole litfuba lekungenela umcimbi wema-Region 5 Awards kulo mnyaka losetulu. Inzasele yemidlalo yebhola Thomas losebenza emsakatweni weSuperSport uthi ngekubuka kwakhe inkinga lenkulu ibhola yakangwane lebhekene nayo lekuyinkinga lesemaveni lamaningi ase-Afrika kunganaki badlali labancane. Uthi lokunyele kuyinsayeya lenkulu kweswelakala kwebhola kwebaholi labacondzako ukuthi yini lemele yendiwe kuthuthukisa ibhola.
Most African countries, I think our people took their eyes off the ball. Okay. I don't know how, but whatever structures they had in place at that time, they were working.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the country seems to have regressed since then. Remember, Eswatini needed a point to qualify for the AFCON.
Yeah.
And that point was when they dropped 2 points against Zimbabwe here at Somhlolo. Yeah. Had they won that game, just that one game, they would have qualified for the AFCON. I think it's not only a problem of Eswatini. It's an African problem that you find sometimes the administrators drop the ball, and sometimes it's an issue of if, as a federation, you say to your players, come into camp, then we are playing a match, and then these will be your bonuses. Even if it's 500 emalangeni, you tell them that every day you will get 500 emalangeni as your daily allowance. And for playing the game, you will get 2,000 emalangeni. Fulfill that promise. Because some of the players depend on that money, you know, for the upkeep of their own families. So when you break those promises, it affects the players and they will not give you the 100% that you expect from them.
Andoda imidlalo sitephesa lapho indzaba tetfu aseselkhefu sabe sichubeke asinshine simo setulu.
First of all, I want to welcome this new important initiative and celebrate the launch of the new centers in Athens and Thessaloniki, which aim to provide valuable psychosocial support for workers in Greece. Protecting the physical and mental health of workers is a core value of the ILO since its foundation in 1919, and its importance was strongly reaffirmed this June 2022, when the International Labour Conference declared a safe and healthy working environment as a fundamental principle and right at work. Mental health at work has a huge impact on society and the world of work, with 12 billion working days lost every year due to depression and anxiety. Poor mental health can further influence physical health, as it can increase the risk of accidents at work. The COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated many risks for workers, with particular impact on workers' mental health, and it reminded us of the importance of addressing mental health in the workplace. Many workers faced unemployment due to the crisis, and countless others struggled with increased job insecurity. Job insecurity and economic vulnerabilities can have substantial negative impacts on mental health and well-being, leading to increased stress, anxiety, and the risk of mental health disorders. For those workers in the informal economy, casual workers, and gig workers, these risks can be even higher. Furthermore, when workers are afraid to lose their job and income, they may be reluctant to speak out about their concerns, including concerns related to safety and health at work. They could also avoid taking sick leave, leading to physical and mental health impacts. The COVID-19 pandemic also put a spotlight on work-life balance, as large numbers of workers shifted to working from home and often found that boundaries between work and personal life can become blurred, resulting in possibly negative consequences for well-being. Workers were often expected to have constant access to their email, even outside of working hours. On the other hand, violence and harassment in the workplace also impacted workers in nearly all sectors. For those in healthcare and emergency services, they often faced physical violence and verbal threats due to anger in communities over the crisis. Those teleworking and working from home also faced the threat of cyberbullying and other virtual types of harassment. As we are slowly moving into the future, beyond the COVID-19 crisis, these risks and many other psychosocial risks continue to pose a threat to our workers worldwide. Moving into the future, a changing world of work with increased working from home and digitalization means that these risks, if not appropriately managed and controlled, will likely increase, as well as be met with additional unforeseen risks. In response to this, the ILO and the WHO recently developed a joint policy brief on mental health at work, calling for action on mental health in the workplace and promoting a comprehensive approach that covers the prevention of psychosocial risks at work, protection and promotion of mental health, as well as support for those living with mental health conditions. It is important that an enabling environment is created to improve mental health and that adequate support is provided to those workers experiencing mental health conditions. Starting with prevention. A preventative approach towards psychosocial risks and mental health at work should be built on sound risk management. Employers should identify all existing hazards and assess the associated risks. Open communication between employers and workers about risks in the workplace can ensure that workers are engaged in preventive efforts and informed about potential risks. The potential sources of stress should be identified, including those psychosocial hazards that may arise due to OSH measures and new work processes and arrangements adopted to control other risks. This has been particularly relevant during the COVID-19 crisis, where measures to control the spread of novel coronavirus may have created new unforeseen hazards. In contexts such as the COVID-19 pandemic, external factors affecting mental health and well-being should also be considered, such as fear of being infected, fear of losing one's job, seeing revenues reduced, fear of experiencing lower quality of life, social isolation, and the weight of domestic responsibilities being increased in the absence of schools and services. Speaking about promoting good mental health and well-being can not only reduce the risk of workers experiencing poor mental health, but can have positive impacts on productivity. Encouraging healthy habits, such as good nutrition, physical exercise, sleep, and social connections can help to create an environment that is conducive to positive mental health. When workers are part of an enterprise that values a positive OSH culture and prioritizes their physical and mental health, work can also have positive impacts on their mental health, providing a sense of purpose and community. Finally, support. It is important that workers can access support systems for their social and psychological health to ensure that workers are not isolated and that they are able to access appropriate help, leading to a quicker recovery and return to work. Initiatives such as the launch of the psychosocial support centers we are celebrating today are a very important step toward making this a reality. I thank you again for inviting me to speak today, and I look forward to hearing the impact of these new centers on workers and the community.
Welcome back. Now, in line with the country's vision of maximizing returns on available resources through service integration and collaborative activities, a decision was made to conduct an integrated tuberculosis, HIV, and prevention of mother-to-child transmission of HIV joint program review during the last quarter of 2023. The joint review is a comprehensive, systematic assessment of the overall national response to the tuberculosis and HIV epidemics. What is the primary purpose of this review? I'm joined now in studio by Dr. Deborah Vambe, who is the technical advisor under the National TB Program. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us this morning to unpack this very much important, program. How are you?
Morning, how are you? I'm good, and you?
I'm very well.
Yes.
Let's just get straight into it. It's a very important program. If we talk about tuberculosis, we talk about HIV and the prevention of mother-to-child transmission, quite serious epidemics that have, been, striking the whole globe for many years now. And of course, we've seen the Ministry of Health with other stakeholders doing, many significant strides to try and curb these epidemics. But I want you to explain this review as a person that is from the inside looking out and, working on these programs. What is it really that you want to achieve with this review?
Okay, thank you very much. So as you've rightly said, that we'll be conducting a joint program review for all these programs, TB, HIV, and PMTCT. So as Minister of Health, we develop strategic plans for all these programs so that it guides us in implementation of the activities, mainly towards making sure our patients are taken care of very well, as well as the community at large. Yeah. So we set targets and goals that we would want to achieve by a certain time. So we really wanted to achieve most of these targets by end of 2023. Yeah. So for TB, for example, we wanted to ensure that the incidence for TB is reduced. We wanted to ensure that mortality also goes down and also achieve a more than 90% treatment success rate. That means those who actually have TB are actually cured. And for HIV, we wanted to ensure that at least there will be 0 infections, and then we also reduce the incidence, and also there's also 0 stigma. For PMTCT as well, we wanted to ensure that the babies that are born with mothers who are HIV positive actually don't get infected. Yeah. So now we want to reflect on those targets to say, have we achieved those targets? Yeah. If we haven't, we want to know the reasons why. So we go all out to the fields. We also interview our healthcare workers, our patients, and also our policymakers just to get an idea what could be the reasons. We don't do this alone. We also invited various consultants or people who have expertise in these various areas, TB, HIV, and PMTCT, to also help us. They're coming from different countries, and we are being given technical assistance by WHO, who are able to actually source all this expertise, not forgetting PEPFAR and also MSF and other partners that supports the Ministry of Health in the country. So basically, it will be quite a big event, and it's going to be happening around 11 March up to the 24th of March. And coincidentally, on the 24th of March, it's a World TB Day. That's where we'll also disseminate all these findings. Yeah. But we will not stop there. After we find these findings, we hope to actually use this information to develop our new strategic plans for the next 5 years. and we are looking at elimination and also epidemic control. So we are hoping to achieve most of those targets.
Yeah.
But we don't want to also forget areas where we have done well.
course.
Yes, because we want to sustain that.
Yeah.
So we also look at ways of how to sustain all those achievements, not just to dwell on the areas where we did improve. And also, we'd also want to congratulate our healthcare workers who are always on the ground, running, taking care of our patients. And this time around, we also want to go to the community, also have a chance to talk to our community leaders. We know they're playing a big role.
Yeah.
And other community healthcare workers and other organizations that also assist the Ministry of Health in terms of managing these 3 epidemics, so that is, at least as a country, we can work towards making sure our patients are taken very well and the community at large. Thank you very much.
As you speak about decentralizing the services into communities, you know, there's an interesting stat about how far, in terms of decentralization, healthcare is in the country, and it's quite good. You know, I was shocked by this stat. It says access to healthcare facilities is up to 85% of the population living within a radius of 8 kilometers from a health facility. Of course, we do have, you know, the underside of it, that the drug and procurement the drug shortages and procurement issue, which, by the way, the Prime Minister has addressed on the, you know, his closing speech of the cabinet retreat in terms of how they plan to address that. But I'm very much taken by what you said in terms of, you know, wanting more than 90% of treatment rate under tuberculosis. And, you know, some of these stats, you know, for me as a journalist are quite, you know, they provoke questions, because one of them is among HIV negative TB patients, the TB mortality rate has increased. They are negative, but it has increased. As well as those that are positive, it says it has increased. So the question then is, what are possible explanations for this, for the increased mortality among both HIV negative and HIV positive? And I know that you are going to discuss these things, you know, as you're still conducting this review, but I'm sure as a person in this field, you have some answers for this particular question.
Yes, thank you very much. So as Minister of Health, when we saw these states that we have some patients who are dying, we conducted what we call mortality audits, where we sit down as healthcare workers, we try to interrogate why our patients dying.
Yeah.
So some of the reasons that we picked up is patients come late.
Okay.
So in as much as we have tried to sensitize our community that there are these conditions and we need to come to the facility as early as possible, but still patients come late. Some of the reasons is still stigma. We still have stigma. And some of the reasons are more cultural. People prefer going somewhere before they come to the facility. So those are some of the reasons. But also, yes, people living with HIV, because you have HIV and you have TB, and also these 2 conditions, sometimes it's quite difficult to treat, because then they'll be taking different medications, and sometimes they interact, and sometimes then they've probably high risk of dying. But if they come early, they take all their medications well, they don't interrupt any treatment, they will be well. But in terms of the HIV negative, we've seen that it's not just the HIV positive that makes you maybe at risk. We have seen issues around malnutrition. We have also seen issues around some, actually, you've got, like, in terms of other non-communicable diseases, they will be actually having probably diabetes, and some might even have cancers. We have seen with TB, a patient might have lung cancer, and because they are coughing, I think the first thing we think is TB. And then they will be treated for TB for a long time, and then they are later discovered. But we are happy as a country now in terms of cancer. They are doing quite well. And in terms of diagnosis, we are trying to diagnose the patients a bit early before we are sending patients to South Africa. But now we are trying to manage some of these conditions in country. So we see that in terms of diagnosis, it's also being done a bit early. Yes, the patients are dying, but they are not as much as we compare from the previous years. But you see, as a country, when they are doing so well, even when you see those few, we are like, no, we don't want them to die. We want them, we want them when we put them on treatment,
Yeah.
we want to ensure that they are treated well and be cured.
If you're talking about more than 90% treatment
Yes.
rate, I would
Yes.
understand why you feel that way. But I'm also interested, one of the issues that you've raised in some of our previous interviews on the news in particular, are the emergence of drug-resistant TB and how much that poses a challenge in the control of tuberculosis in Eswatini. Care to explain to us what drug-resistant TB is really and how it does really pose a challenge to know the control of tuberculosis in Eswatini?
Okay. So drug-resistant TB, let me try to explain it very simple.
Yeah, simple terms.
So basically, when we treat TB, the drug-sensitive or the susceptible TB, the one that we treat for 6 months, we give you treatment, which these 4 drugs, rifampicin, isoniazid, ethambutol, and pyrazinamide. So when you now have drug-resistant TB, it means these drugs are not working anymore. So it can be the rifampicin, one of the drugs is not working, or it can be 2 drugs not working, or 3, or all of them. So if those are not working, we call it drug-resistant TB. It can happen in various ways. It can be someone who had drug-resistant TB actually was still in the community, was coughing, and it gets transmitted to the next person. Or it's just a natural thing in the body where when this TB bacilli is replicating, they're becoming many. There's a chance of a bacilli not coming out this way it's supposed to be.
How do you overcome this challenge? I see that it is quite,
Yes.
technical and very scientific
Yes,
explanation there. But how do we overcome this challenge? Because it is quite, a big concern for the health sector.
Yes, if we can pick that TB as early as possible and treat it very fast, it's fine. And also, if you are taking treatment, you don't need to take treatment and stop.
Yeah.
Then you give a chance of the bacilli to start replicating, and then you have high chances of getting drug-resistant TB. So we wanted to at least for people to know that it happens both ways. It's not just not taking treatment, but it can be natural, or it can be also in terms of infection prevention control. You also get infected with the next person.
Yeah.
It's quite tough to treat. That's the truth. But we are happy these days. We have now new drugs that are coming in.
Yeah.
And also the challenges we've been having is the longer duration of treatment. People would take for 2 years, and people would even have injections. But now we have stopped injections. We have new drugs. We have even reduced the duration of treatment. We can even take for 6 months now, just recently. So
Doctor,
it's something that we'll talk about later.
I'm very much afraid we will not be able to get, the prevention of mother-to-child transmission of HIV. But let's just touch briefly on HIV. Perhaps maybe you can come back next week and then we'll dive into the other one.
Okay.
There's one thing that's concerning me very much under HIV, the fact that you guys have stated that there's a prevalence among adolescents, but particularly among women more than, young male adults. What is the reason for that? And is it probably a call to prioritize HIV awareness amongst girls more than men? Because I looked at the statistics. It's quite alarming and concerning that women have so much, there's so much HIV prevalence among women.
Okay. So we are not saying let's not also look at the men, but yes, the prevalence says that the adolescents, in terms of the women, we need to pay attention. But it also goes to say sometimes they have probably sexual intercourse with the older age group. Yes, so you have seen that. So those are the challenges. Yes. So we are looking at how do we try to address all those issues. It's also looking at the adolescents, but also looking at how do we also empower them to ensure that they can also use prevention. There are condoms there. There's also PrEP. They should also be in that position to use. But I understand with our culture, and they are looking at this young child asking for a condom or trying to use PrEP, and then. But we've also tried to also train our healthcare workers, encourage them not to be mothers, but to be healthcare workers, and also take care of those adolescents.
Interesting.
Yes.
I'm very much afraid we have run out of time. We didn't have enough time, but I don't know. Can we agree in front of everyone watching us that you'll come back next week and probably dive into the other subtopics under this review?
Okay.
That's a promise. Okay. Dr. Deborah Vambe from the Ministry of Health, especially technical advisor under the National tuberculosis, program. She's joined us to explain some of these, issues under this review that are very much of high importance. You talk about tuberculosis, you talk about the prevalence of HIV and the prevention of mother-to-child prevention. Hopefully she's going to come back next week as she has promised. We have run out of time. We're going to take a quick ad break and then we come back. Siqhubeka nehlelo.
Do you remember the spinning thing? This is us. This picture represents what we did. We were there when coronavirus wreaked havoc in our population. Together with other stakeholders, we formed the first line, controlling the spread of the unknown and unseen enemy of the people. Anxious ourselves, we collected dead bodies countrywide. At the time when no one wanted to come near dead bodies of loved ones, we did care for our fellow citizens. Thank you, the people of Eswatini and teams of first responders.
Three minutes before 7 a.m. lomhla ekuseni ke kulesikhathi sanyalo sijoyina nguye Sergeant Music Gule losipha yona i-traffic update sovele ke sosimele elicingweni Magobane sikuvusele lomhla ekuseni ngabe time kanjani timo emgwaqweni lomhla.
Angivusele Mnguni ngivusele umbukelo waloluhlelo sivuka solo sinayo imkhemetelo indzawo letiphakeme kwenda ke ukuthi imigwaqo ibonakale imandi asichubeke ke sibashayeli sishayile ngalokukhulu ukucophelela wende isiqiniseko sokuthi litubane lakho uyalinciphisa umgamu wokulandzela lenye imotolo uyawuqina kuba nguloyo lophephile kanjalo ke indzawo elibonakala kunayo inkungu asijinge sikhuthale lokukhanyisa emalambo hayi ngoba ungabona indlela kepha ke sendela ukuthi usheshe mhlambe ubonakale kuze kokuthi nalomnye umshayeli athathe isinqumo lesiyawuba ngileso lesiphephile kanti ke emadolobheni ethu ekhathi edolobheni laseMbabane tibane tingasebenzi kahle ngito tibane etilapha eceleni kwasesibhedlela letingawukhombisa umbala lobovu ukhombisa ukuthi setivalile na uqhamuka esibhedlela ubuka i-industrial site noma ke uqhamuka e-cash build ubuka khona esibhedlela siyacela nje ukuthi bashayeli baqaphele kakhulu kulolo hlangothi kanti ke nakhona lapha eMangwaneni kwakhelelana nasi yasikole saMangwaneni primary leto tibane leto nato solo atisebenzi kukhumbuta nje bashayeli ukuthi phela nasiya etibaneni letingasebenzi asende isiqiniseko sokuthi siyema njengekusho kwemthetho yetemgwaqo ukuthi lapho tingasebenzi khona tibane iyawuguquka leyo ndzawo ibe i-3 way noma ibe i-4 way stop lekusho ukuthi siyawuniketana wona emathuba sibhaliwe salade singisomhlelo road kanjalo namakhosini drive kanti entsabeni yethu lengumalagwane ku-MR3 lekungumgwaqo lomkhulu solo sikhona lapha eTulu kuleya cooling station kanti nakuwo umgwaqo lomkhulu lobheka khona lapha kumathapha solo bakhona labo labasebenza emgwaqweni ngetigaba ngakwehlukahlukana timpawu ke nakhona ikhona tibekiwe bekunene aseshayile ngalokukhulu ukucophelela kanti na usuka lapha kuMalken ubheka khona kubobhunya uyophuma khona kumalutha loyo mgwaqo loyo kulandzela Donati Mvula awukho esimeni lesikahle kanti ke naleminye nje imigwaqo njengawumgwaqo lapha endase emaphiveni nawubheka khona kuThabankulu nawenyuka ubheka khona kalomahasha ngaye MR3 nakuletinye izindzawo letiningi ngato timvula kwendeke ukuthi imigwaqo yethu ingabi ngile kahle asichubeke bekunene sinake liso lakho libe ngelikhaliphile uqenza yona indlela lekugcizelela ke bekunene ukuthi khona lapho asikhumbuleni malangeni lamahle ukuthi phela emgwaqweni siyabambisana usebenzisa ngemikhakha lehlukene nalabo hamba inyawo kunalabo gibele kanjalo ke kunalabo ke labasebenzisa Donati Motolo asibambisane asihloniphane asibeketelelane kuleyo ngcingwana leyo kungaba ngiloko nje ekuseni sithi awukunene la ukhona khona yenda siqiniseko sokuthi indzawo noma ke inzima yephepha uyayenda ngendlela leya ukwenda ukuthi wena nalomnyelo osebenzisa umgwaqo aphephe siyabonga kakhulu Mnguni sinifisela kusebenza okuhle endlini emsakato naso sive samaswati sisifisela ilanga lelihle naleliphephile sawusebenzisa
Siyabonga Magwabane, naningene benelusuku loluhle nisaqhubeka nomsebenzi welive sitabahlala emakethe nasibuya sichubeka nehlelo sibuka indzaba leqhamuka ngephandle kwalapha ekhaya.
Watch local TV on the go with the Eswatini TV app for only 20 emalangeni per month. Do the most with Eswatini TV app. Download from Google Play Store or App Store. We're good together.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Alrighty, it's just gone 2 minutes after 7. Let's take a look at our international news headlines. New Zealand has declared a national state of emergency for what is just the third time in its history. That alert coming as Cyclone Gabrielle continues to cause flooding, landslides and ocean swells, forcing evacuations and stranding people on rooftops. More than 60,000 homes lost power.
Mass flooding and dangerous landslides, forcing evacuation across New Zealand's North Island, caused by Cyclone Gabrielle. It has led to a state of emergency being declared by Prime Minister Chris Hipkins for just the third time in the country's history.
A national state of emergency has been declared, and that means that we'll be throwing everything at this to make sure we're providing as much support to the response as possible. I want to acknowledge the situation that New Zealanders have been waking up to this morning. A lot of families displaced, a lot of homes without power, extensive damage done across the country.
The cyclone first hit New Zealand's North Island on Sunday and is expected to move south across the coming days. While the country is over the worst, more rain and high winds are expected, with hundreds of thousands being left without electricity.
You know, like the thunder and lightning and everything last night was just horrific. So, but the devastation is just, it just makes you want to cry, to be honest. Very upsetting.
Hipkins has promised an aid package of 11.5 million New Zealand dollars, nearly 7 million euros, to help recovery efforts.
Humanitarian aid is still on the ground in Turkey and Syria. 3 more people were pulled from the rubble of a building in Turkey this morning. Those miraculous rescues are becoming more and more rare 8 days after the devastating earthquake that's left more than 37,000 people dead in both southern Turkey and northwest Syria.
Entering its final hours, rescuers battle against the clock in Turkey with excavators and thermal cameras, scouring desperately for signs of life. It's been over a week since the tragic disaster rocked the country, and the hopes of finding survivors is growing thinner by the hour.
From here, the last rescued people was 2 days ago. For 2 days only, just they are dead. It's difficult. Sometimes you cry. Sometimes you just wait.
Experts believe that the massive drop in temperatures to -6 degrees and many buildings' total collapse are further closing the window. But despite the odds, there are still miracles happening from beneath the rubble. Here in Antakya, this 13-year-old boy, only identified as Khan, was pulled from the wreckage to applause and relief after 182 hours buried underneath. A young girl was also rescued after a week underground, as was a 72-year-old woman in the same district. But the UN aid chief says it might be time to look ahead.
The rescue phase is dragging live people out from the rubble and finding those who died in the rubble. That's coming to a close. And now the humanitarian phase, the urgency of providing shelter, psychosocial care, food, schooling, and a sense of the future for these people. That's our obligation now.
Volunteer effort and international aid continue to pour in as the scale of the disaster comes into view. The quake is the worst in Turkey's modern history and the 6th most deadly disaster this century.
Villages in northwestern Syria are facing a double disaster, first devastated by last Monday's massive earthquake and then subsequently deluged by the collapse of local levees.
Double tragedy, first the quake and then the deluge as levees failed, flooding the village of Tulul in northwestern Syria's Idlib province.
What happened couldn't be described by the roar of water we used to hear. It was like tanks were coming to kill us. We can't really describe the scene that happened other than a disaster.
The Tulul village, like the rest of the region, was already reeling from the devastating earthquake. But with continuous aftershocks, levees protecting the village from the waters of the Orontes finally gave way.
The earthquake greatly affected the levees, which caused cracks in the land, including in the levee between the nearby dam and our village. Eventually, the levees failed, causing a surge of water. There are more than 40 houses that were completely destroyed.
Tulul village was host to many refugees who had fled the nation's civil war. But despite the desperate efforts, they couldn't save the village, with 700 families made homeless by the flood.
The truth is that the village is completely flooded with water, and people are displaced from all their homes. We, as the residents of the village, try as much as we could to close the levees so that this disaster would not happen. But it did not work out. And what happened, and unfortunately, the flood happened.
Now, the village's inhabitants are cold and wet and, like the whole region, are waiting for help amid sub-zero winter temperatures, with the fear that dams in the area could fail, triggering yet more floods.
We are currently asking everyone, whether organizations or countries, to help secure the situation and to shelter people fleeing the earthquake and floods as soon as possible, and to meet the needs of the people, because most of the residents who fled the village left without carrying anything.
While international aid is slowly arriving in Syria, for isolated places like the Tulul village, inundated by water, residents could be waiting as it takes time for assistance to arrive. Dorian Jones, VOA News, Istanbul.
Now in Syria, refugee children in southern Turkey have never known a time without war in their home country. Last week's devastating double earthquake has now struck their home away from home, shattering their safe haven in just one night.
Days after the quake, still the bodies come. We're near the epicenter in Kahramanmaraş, a city home to many Syrian refugees. And for the children here who've already lived so much during the war, the trauma is clear.
تواجهنا كثير. في عالم عندي 3 رفقاتي ماتوا من حرق وحرق. في عالم صعدناهم حتى طلعوا بالباقيرات وبالشاحنات.
12-year-old Muhammad is from Hama in central Syria. He's taking us to meet his family. They've survived the quake, but their house has been badly damaged. Even though it isn't safe, they have nowhere else to go.
I'm scared. Whenever I go to my room, I think it will move and collapse, and then make a lot of noise. It's not just me who's scared, my siblings are too. My sister's too afraid to go into our home. The roof is broken, and that scares us as well.
These children have never known a time without war in Syria. And now Mother Nature has struck their home away from home, their safe haven gone in a night.
أول يوم تعبت نفسيتهم كتير يعني تعبت.
The day after the quake, the children were struggling psychologically. But they've been forced to adapt because of the war in Syria. Every time they go out, they fear another quake or a bomb dropped by Bashar.
بدي يضرب بشار يعني هيك يقولوا بدي يضرب بشار ده.
With millions in need here, the security situation is fragile. Looting is becoming more common, and some are blaming Syrian refugees.
The police treated us badly. I was trying to take some wood to warm my family, and it made me throw it away. They accused me of being a thief. Am I a thief with this injured hand? I was helping Turkish people. I stayed 2 days and helped them, me and my kid.
This is a region where communities have coexisted for centuries. But even before the quake, there were growing tensions between Turks and Syrians. And now, for families like these, there are real questions about what comes next.
Now in Belgium, NATO defense ministers are meeting in Brussels today. The gathering comes a day after Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said Ukraine was going through ammunition faster than can be produced. Ukrainian authorities are expected to use the occasion to ask for more weapons and jets to keep Russian forces at bay.
The Ukrainian defense minister joked about fighter jets with reporters as he entered a bilateral meeting with U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin this Tuesday.
It's part of my wish list to Santa.
Ukraine has again called for Western countries to provide fighter jets as NATO defense ministers met for urgent talks on Ukraine's weapon supplies. But the NATO allies and partners' priorities are elsewhere. They're focused on keeping the supplies of ammunition and weapons flowing to the front line. According to some estimates, Ukraine is firing some 6,000 to 7,000 artillery shells each day, around a third of the daily amount Russia is using. NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg warned Ukraine is using up ammunition much faster than its allies can supply it.
The war in Ukraine is consuming an enormous amount of ammunition and depleting Allied stockpiles. The current rate of Ukraine's ammunition expenditure is many times higher than our current rate of production. This puts our defense industries under strain.
Ukraine's Western supporters have already supplied billions of dollars of arms to Kiev to hold Moscow back, including tanks, air defense systems and long-range rockets. The NATO chief urged them to step up this support. Moscow's forces have been pressing in the east of Ukraine while bolstering defensive lines in the south. The war has been largely static during the winter months, though Russian troops have slowly been taking ground around the city of Bakhmut, with the nearby town of Vuhledar also under heavy bombardments. And as spring draws closer, new Russian offensives are expected.
We take our attention now to Russia, where Russian forces have bombarded Ukrainian positions along the front lines in eastern Donetsk region on Tuesday in what appeared to be early salvos of a new offensive as NATO allies met in Brussels to plan stepped-up supplies to the Kyiv government. The Donetsk region city of Bakhmut, a major target for Russian President Vladimir Putin's invading troops, was in a precarious position.
For Ukrainian soldiers defending Bakhmut, there is only one way left in or out of the city. Russian forces have cut off access to all other roads.
They're trying to push us and to encircle us, so we have to leave the city. But it hasn't worked yet. Of course, we have losses, but we are managing and holding on.
Bakhmut has been the stage for the longest battle since the start of Russia's invasion. For months now, Moscow has been trying to capture the city, an assault spearheaded by mercenaries from the private Russian company, the Wagner Group. For Vladimir Putin, capturing Bakhmut would represent a victory after several months of setbacks. Russian forces are drawing closer, and capturing the city would give Russia a new foothold in the Donetsk region. On Monday, Moscow claimed that they had captured a village, less than 10 kilometers from Bakhmut city centre.
Volunteer assault units have liberated the village of Krasnohora of the Donetsk People's Republic.
For its part, Kyiv says it's holding back Russian advances for now.
I thank everyone who is in the fight. I thank each of our soldiers who prevented the occupier from encircling Bakhmut, who destroys the enemy in the Vuhledar direction, leaving nothing from the occupier except for the burnt traces on the ground.
As Ukraine prepares itself for the oncoming onslaught, positions in Bakhmut have been fortified and only those with a military role were being allowed in. Any civilians wanting to leave will have to brave the incoming fire.
United States Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says he expects Ukraine to conduct an offensive against Russia in the spring and that the 54 members of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group are focused on providing Kyiv with the ammunition, fuel and spare parts they will need.
Members of the U.S.-led Ukraine Contact Group met in Brussels Tuesday, with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin making clear that Ukraine is not alone in its fight against Russia's invasion. Asked where things stand, Austin had this to say.
What Ukraine wants to do in at the first possible moment is to establish or create momentum and establish conditions on the battlefield that continue to be in its favor. And so we expect to see them conduct an offensive sometime in the spring.
Austin said the 54 countries represented in the group will do everything they can to keep the ammunition and arms Kyiv needs flowing as Russia ramps up its attacks. The Russian Defense Ministry released these images Monday, saying they show artillery and air defense units operating in Ukraine. The U.S. Defense Secretary said Russia is sending large numbers of new troops into Ukraine, but many are ill-equipped and ill-trained. Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, noted Russia continues to push forward in Ukraine's Donbas region.
They are attacking in the Donbas right now. Their progress is slow. It's a war of attrition. They're taking heavy casualties. Their leadership and morale is not great, and they're struggling mightily. However, they do have numbers.
A Russian army spokesman said Monday that what he called volunteer assault units, with the support of missile and artillery forces, have captured a village just north of Bakhmut. Ukraine has conceded the situation is difficult around the embattled eastern city. Ukraine has asked for Western fighter jets to defend itself, but Austin said he had nothing to announce on that. He added the U.S. has not prevented Poland or any other country from providing its own aircraft, noting the decision would be up to each individual nation. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
Ukrainian troops training on Leopard 2 tanks in Poland got a visit from the Polish president on Monday. Ukrainian armed forces personnel taught by Polish, Norwegian and Canadian instructors have been learning how to operate and maintain the German-built tanks as they prepare to receive donations of Western armor in the coming months.
As Russia's spring offensive looms, Ukrainian troops are learning how to operate German-made Leopard 2 tanks. They're being trained by Polish, Norwegian and Canadian instructors for up to 10 hours a day.
We don't need to motivate them. We actually need to hold them back and transfer knowledge to them in small batches. They're very motivated to quickly reach the required level of skills and knowledge.
The training is taking place at a military base and test range in southwestern Poland. Ukrainians here are hopeful the tanks will be a game changer on the battlefield.
I believe that these tanks will be of great help to our army. Once we master how to use them, especially in combat situations, I think the impact will be huge.
Polish President Andrzej Duda was at the military base to meet the Ukrainian troops who'd come straight from the front line.
These are soldiers who were fighting on the battlefield just a few days ago. They came here. Just look at their faces. You can see that these are people who have experienced terrible things.
Warsaw is one of Ukraine's most active supporters and has pushed European nations to provide Kyiv with the modern battle tanks. Poland and Germany have each promised to send at least 14 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. Other contributing countries include Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands.
Chinese leader Xi Jinping has expressed support for Iran during a visit by its president on Tuesday as Tehran tries to expand relations with Beijing and Moscow to offset Western sanctions over its nuclear development. Now, the official Chinese account of Xi's meeting with Ibrahim Raisi gave no indication whether they discussed Russia's attack on Ukraine. Tehran supplied military drones to Russian President Vladimir Putin's government, but says they were delivered before the war began.
Earlier, we spoke with Beijing correspondent Yena Li. It comes amid growing tensions between Iran and China with the West, and in particular the U.S.
Well, despite Tehran's wariness and fears over China's close relationship with Gulf nations, Iran and China's relationship has been growing, and the two have really been bonding over their anti-American and anti-Western narrative. There was an interesting editorial actually published here in a Chinese state newspaper called The People's Daily that was signed by President Raisi, in which he says that both countries oppose unilateralism and that sanctions are the main source of crisis and insecurity in the world. These are talking points that, of course, Beijing would very much agree with. But despite tensions on the Chinese side and on the European and the American side, diplomats are very eager to say that the channels of communication remain open. And as we speak, China's top diplomat Wang Yi is heading to France, Italy and Hungary for a one-week-long trip in Europe. And he'll also be attending the Munich Security Conference. And the Americans, the US, are saying that they're even considering a sideline chat between Wang Yi and Antony Blinken.
Moldova has reopened its airspace after temporary closure yesterday. The latest development comes after Moldova's president accused Russia of plotting her government's overthrow. The accusation has been rejected by Moscow. Last week, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Kyiv had intercepted a plan for the destruction of Moldova by Russian intelligence.
Moscow says it's not plotting a coup in the former Soviet Republic of Moldova and is accusing Moldovan authorities of Russophobia. It says, unlike Western countries and Ukraine, we do not interfere in the internal affairs of Moldova and other countries of the world. That denial comes after the Moldovan president on Monday said Russia has been plotting to use foreign saboteurs to bring down her leadership as part of Moscow's war against Ukraine.
The plan involves actions using saboteurs with a military background, camouflaged in civilian clothes, who will undertake violent actions, attack some state buildings, and even take hostages.
Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky said last week his country had uncovered a Russian intelligence plan for the destruction of Moldova. Days later, the Moldovan government resigned. The White House on Monday expressed its support following Moldova's accusation Moscow was plotting a coup.
Deeply concerning reports, certainly not outside the bounds of Russian behavior. And we absolutely stand with the Moldovan government and the Moldovan people.
The EU says it knows how much Moldova is under Russian pressure. The country gained independence from the former Soviet Union in 1991 and applied for EU membership last year. It neighbors Ukraine and EU member state Romania. The breakaway region of Transnistria has a Russian-speaking population, and Moscow has troops stationed there. There is increasing concern they could be drawn into Vladimir Putin's conflict with Ukraine.
France is gearing up for a new massive strike day this Thursday, February 16th. That'll be the 5th day of protests against government's plans to push the retirement age from 62 to 64. Now, the pension bill is due to be voted soon in Parliament, but has already been the subject of very heated debate there.
France's contested pension reform goes to vote in Parliament in just a few days. But the debate over the draft law is getting increasingly heated. On Monday, a French MP from the left-wing Unbowed party accused a minister of being a murderer.
You are responsible for these political choices. You are an imposter and a murderer.
After these remarks, the debate in the National Assembly was temporarily suspended.
I suspend for 2 minutes.
Once resumed, Aurélien Saint-Toul publicly apologized. His comments sparked a wave of criticism, including from French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne, who said in a tweet,
"The National Assembly should be the place for debate, not for insults. Those who offend are not worthy of the French people who elected them or of the democratic debate they expect."
The reform bill that's being debated in Parliament will raise the legal retirement age from 62 to 64 and abolish some special retirement schemes. Opposition politicians have filed 20,000 amendments to slow down the debate, with the majority from the left-wing NUP alliance that opposes any increase in the retirement age. Macron's plans are not only facing stiff resistance in Parliament, but also on the streets. Across the country, protests are gathering pace. France's 8 main unions have agreed on a 5th day of protest that will take place this Thursday. They've also warned they intend to bring France to a standstill on March the 7th, if the plans for pension reform are maintained.
The United Nations Human Rights Office in Uganda may close soon. The authorities have decided not to renew its mandate, which expires this year. Kampala believes it can do without it. This a cause for concern for NGOs. Attacks on journalists, imprisonment of lawyers, and opposition leaders were the order of the day during the last presidential election.
It has highlighted instances of torture and illegal detentions. Now, the UN's local human rights office in Uganda faces closure. One rights defender said the decision to shut the office was contradictory.
Now it is the time to rebuild that. It is the time to extend expertise, technical assistance to those institutions to rebuild this sector to what we should be expecting. However, this is the time when government also makes a decision that office is not required.
The government justified its decision by invoking the prevailing peace throughout the country, in addition to the presence of what it described as a vibrant civil society and strong national human rights institutions. But in a climate of growing tensions, activists say they're worried. In 2021, the authorities suspended the operations of 54 NGOs. They invoked a range of reasons, including non-compliance with regulations requiring NGOs not to be involved in politics. Ugandan opposition leader Bobi Wine reacted to the latest decision by urging the international community to do more.
We think that the regime in Uganda should be isolated by all democracy-seeking people, by all people that have respect for human rights, democracy, and the rule of law.
Wine was arrested several times during the campaign for the last presidential election, in which he finished runner-up.
Tunisians are increasingly feeling the brunt of a growing economic crisis. Rising prices, inflation, and low salaries have seen the standard of living drop drastically in recent years, and many are losing faith in the government's ability to rescue the economy.
Lassad Mejri has long struggled to cope with the basic costs of living in Tunisia. But in recent years, the 57-year-old street cleaner has been forced to tighten the purse strings even more and barely earns enough to feed his family.
I can't buy basic products like vegetables anymore. My family is hungry. We can no longer eat 3 meals a day.
Like many Tunisians, Mejri has been feeling the pinch of inflation. Amplified by the COVID-19 pandemic, As well as the global surge in prices, it's now hovering between 10 and 20%. Unemployment also remains high, and the country has begun experiencing shortages of food and medicine. Vendors at this street market say customers are now more hesitant to buy goods due to rising prices. Some have even begun looking for a way out.
I need to leave this country. I have a family. I'm seriously considering emigrating. I'm doing everything I can, but I can no longer cope with the rising prices.
An economic crisis in the making, which many blame on the government. Tunisia has long been pushing for an international bailout in order to avoid bankruptcy, but the country's ongoing political turmoil has left lenders skeptical of Kais Saied's capacity to enact reforms.
The largest and longest running auto show in North America, the Chicago Auto Show, is an annual showcase of the latest vehicle technology and offerings available to customers. VOA reports this year's show reflects consumer demand and government's mandates. We have more.
The Chicago Auto Show is a launchpad for manufacturers to showcase their latest offerings. In recent years, the focus was the battery-powered electric vehicle, or BEV. But amid soaring vehicle prices, variety and choice are emphasized at this year's auto show.
At Toyota, we believe there shouldn't just be one formula.
Toyota's Kurt McAllister says the company's current product lineup, a mix of electric and gas-powered automobiles, reflects customer feedback.
Our customers are telling us that they want choices. They just don't want us to try to pigeonhole them into one subset.
Which is why Toyota is profiling a fifth-generation Prius, a best-selling hybrid that uses both a battery and a gasoline-powered engine.
We now have 21 hybrids across our lineup between Toyota and Lexus. So it's a big part of our carbon neutrality message.
McAllister says Toyota isn't ignoring the rapidly growing but more expensive BEV market.
But we want to make sure that we have something that not only makes sense for us, but also makes sense for their pocketbook.
Higher interest rates for car loans in 2022 slowed new vehicle purchases, marking the first drop in sales in a decade. Even so, the number of BEVs sold increased by about 65% from a year earlier, according to research firm Motor Intelligence. BEVs made up nearly 6% of U.S. new car sales last year. Manufacturers say customers are struggling to overcome range anxiety, how far EVs can travel before needing to recharge. In the United States, gas stations far outnumber charging stations.
Our customer base, some of them are not ready for EVs. Actually, our plan for the next 5 years is to offer EVs for those that are ready in the three most competitive segments, but at the same time offer ICE vehicles or gas-powered vehicles for those that are not ready.
Chad Lyons with General Motors' Chevrolet brand says demand for gas-powered sedans has plummeted. As a result, his company's lineup is focused on sport utility vehicles, or SUVs. Later this year, Chevrolet will offer 2 new battery-powered SUVs, and the choices don't end there.
Pickup trucks are the heart of America, and so we're going to offer the Silverado EV as well.
I think everyone loves muscle cars.
Dodge design manager Dejan Ninov says customers want vehicles that look less electric and more classic.
I think if you look at all the electric cars out there right now, they all sort of look the same. You know, they all have the same feeling and character. They kind of have the same proportion, jelly bean proportion.
Ninov is designing a concept that transitions the iconic Challenger muscle car into an all-electric vehicle.
We have this sort of very powerful look to the car, something that it's not really out there, and that's a big part of the muscle car experience.
While manufacturers emphasize choice, U.S. President Joe Biden wants 50% of all vehicles on the road to be electric by 2030. California, meanwhile, is mandating that all new vehicles sold in the state be electric or hydrogen-powered by 2035. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Chicago, Illinois.
34 minutes after 7 sesifike emaphethelweni etindzaba tethu letichamwa ngaphandle kwalapha ekhaya sikosinyalo-ke sitabahlola itimakethe singaka itimakethe sitawuthatha simo selitulo.
Welcome back. You're still watching Kusile Breakfast. Show sakuvusela nawe lesonza kusivulela besivedile ukuthi sitabe sikhulumisana ne-dermatologist losuka khona itikule tempilo sikhuluma ngabanti nge-skin whitening. Takumleka ukuthi skin whitening is the use of cosmetic products to reduce the amount of melanin noma ke pigment in the skin to make it appear lighter. I-trend ke lena lesayithume emhlaba wonke, and also the practice lena dates back to centuries. Labanye bayibita ngekuthi skin lightening, skin whitening, bleaching. Kanti ke kulamanye ama-cultures lamaningi nje lighter skin is associated with beauty and also better prospects in terms of employment. Labanye ke bacabanga ukuthi kuyabasita ukuthi mangabe ba-light skinned batasheshe bayithola imisebenzi, noma labanye bacabanga ukuthi batasheshe bayithola imishado, nekuthi nje labanye baya nemicabango ukuthi mangabe umnyama awukho mhlambe in fashion, so ngako ke bese bathi khanza seba bleacher skin sabo. And of course ngekusho kwelicwaningo noma ke i-article le published CNN last year yavade ukuthi women account to 80% of sales worldwide and men account to 20%. A global estimation ke ye market was estimated at $8 billion in 2020. Ivame kakhulu ke indzaba ye skin bleaching khona emhlabeni. To talk more about this, we have in studio dermatologist Dr. Kusile akusichazele ukuthi ingaba vele mhlambe ema side effects in the long run ukuthi ubleach skin sakho siba kanjani. Good morning Dr. Siyabonga ukuthi wena silamhla ekseni. I think sengivedile nje kancane la kafishane lokuthi vele it's a trend leseyivame across the world. Bamvuso khanze ukuthi bathi bleacher and in the long run sebavuvuka buso ma lips khona kubuyela esimeni lesikahle. I think nje ngaba kuvela ukuthi are dangerous kanganan lama products lawa, because we tend to use a lot of different products. Lamanye they are certified, but lamanye khanze ukuthi vele awavumi ukuthi siwasebenzisa on the skin.
Morning and morning to the viewers at home. Well, yeah, vele sinenkinga lenkulu ye skin bleaching. And maybe I can just add one more point. That there is no product that is certified for bleaching. Maybe ngeswati good product levumelekile ukuthi si bleach ngoba bleacher kuvumelekile, it's acceptable, it's a norm la kithi la ngaphandle, but kithi betempilo cha akusinto levumelekile. So that's why kutena yini I product lokuthiwa lena ke yakhelwe ukuthi ngableacher. So maningi lama products lesiwasebenzisa ukuthi singaqala sibale wona before sikhulume ngalokunye ukuthi yini kona lekusetshenziswako for lokubleacher le skin. All right, so kunema tube lathengiswako akunana kulokubhuqwa abantu bahambe bathenge isikotela sabo lesibhucwe ngemuva. Kunalokunye lokungumuthi lesikusebenzisako thina betempilo ngekuthi silapha something, but i-side effect ibe ngilokubleach. But kakhulu look accessible la khaya kulama tube bamhla batithengela wona e-chemist nanaku lokubhucwa abantu. Kulamalanga ke there's a very big trend ye-glutathione. Everyone talks about glutathione yokujova plus amaphilisi abantu labayanathako. So these things are readily available, but they are obviously illegal. Akavumeleki nahulumende walakhaya akavumeleki ukuthi akakavumi ukuthi sikusebenzise for ukubleacher, just like emhlabeni wonke akavumeleki ukuthi kubleachwe ngakho.
Yeah, as you've just mentioned nje dokotela ukuthi nala Eswatini seniyakubona ngisafuna ukubutela ukuthi vele ku common kangana nje lokuthi vele lana we will have people asebana complications ngekuthi ba bleach skin sabo, because I know ukuthi vele kulabanye amave even there's TV shows labasitshengisa ukuthi bleaching gone wrong. Ingabe nje ufuna ukuthi how common is it la Eswatini vele sesifike kulesigaba leso yense ukuthi vele sesifuna ukukhanya so ngosebenzisa amaphilisi sesebenzisa lokwana lokwa.
It's actually very common. We see it all the time. We see it all the time. All right. Umumvu umbonele ukuthi somhlophe, okay, ngiyashada gaba negaba. Ngeke ukuthi bona afford ayiphi product yalo bleacher. Because listening la khaya abantu ba afford lama tube nale stap basithenga emgwaqweni simixwe kumuntu. Khanze ukuthi umbuso obovuke lapsweni. Uyabona but into le kunema side effects. One, now sacala vele ukuthi awukhanye umfakhanye njengawo. Then bese konta nale skin bese sibabovu. Masibabovu le skin sakho asakhona ukukuvikela elangeni. Akusakhona ukuthi silo nemagciwane la awuhlala esikhumbeni. So umuntu lone skin lesitaba lula ukuthi singaba nema infection, lesitaba lula ukuthi sibe nema allergy. Nalokuthi nakuphola lokubabovu. kushiya ema-permanent defects. So nawuphola netishu baba emashashadza lamnyama la permanent from bleaching. Bekamuhle lo mva afana nawo afuna kufana nawo vele afana nawo. But in the long term, this thing causes permanent, irreversible damage to the skin.
So what is the actual product in vele specifically lele into lokuthi vele le skin bese siyaphikisa lele kwenta ukuthi si ube bovu noma mhlambe so nale marks lamnyama yini kahle kahle the product nje?
Yeah, so these things are very cheap. But a chemist, steroids, you know, the tube, the container is steroid. Yes, so but gobisa bo lenovate, but gobisa bo persevate, but gobisa bo dovate. Leo actually meets le sebenzisa for treat activity is combined side effects, it's lightning. But in the long term, itakubangela machichi. In the long term, dokubangela kusubovu, itakubangela usube mnyama permanently. So those are the things, example, hydrocortisone, persevate, lenovate, dovate, nothing wrong with those things. The medication for something else, but then basically for the skin lightening.
Yeah, I think ngubonile nje lokho there was khona move bengimati bekasebenzisa labo persevate athi kuyazama lokho ukuthi vele mhlambe skin sakhe sibe clear because labanye bakusebenzisa lokho ukuthi bazama ukususa lamajiji but ngiyathi ukuthi vele prescription ithi kusebenzisa for a while mabune rash noma ke leyo pimple but then bona babese bakusebenzisa isikhathi lesithe yini bese sekuyenda kule damage to the skin masebenzisa ama products rash.
Absolutely. So the persevate, for example, lenovate, whatever steroid, like you're rightfully saying, for an allergy on the face. Okay? But then I come back with cuts, you know, which is it's not indicated for my chichi. It might help like taleni by but in the long term, my chichi, my black hairs, my white hairs will challenge. When I was to tell my chichi, I've been known for the first few months, but after about 3 months, 6 months, so when my black hairs, my white hairs, like all the bongo, some people go bongo, best get back a sick short, it thins up the skin. Let's come back to protect and say the product. Forty bese kuba ne dependence awusakhona lokuyekela now uyekela kuyaluma now uyekela kuyaluma sesibona lokho uthi uma uyagcobisa le persevate for a very long time nathi ufuna ukuyekela ngoba sowuvile namhla ukuthi ufuna uyekela so uyaluma akasakhona lokuyekela two so nemajiji cela umkolo buso skin sakhe se-stand out sesigcwele nema veins sesibovu utshu like red as in tamatisi sesipholile sabamnyama. Easy infections, so nema fungi la khona lapsweni ma ringworm abonga ngokuthi skin sakhe asakhona ukuvikela etifeni because lokuma steroids kubanga vele kusuppressa le immune system yana le skin.
So speaking of amachichi nje doctor, yathi ukuthi kunebamfu lo khanze ukuthi baba nawo lamachichi vele and naso la ngapheli baba frustrated so they try every product there is. So it's possible ukuthi mhlambe ngawo sabakhanze sabasebenzisa labo persevate so abangwa yini lamajiji la lo khanze ukuthi bese akasapheli yini le kumele akwende ukuthi akhona ukutelaphisa leyo acne leyo.
You know what, this is a very funny question. People say that all the time. They've never seen a dermatologist. They've gone to a friend, they've gone to Instagram, but they've never seen a dermatologist for their acne. You cannot then be saying that. You need to see a doctor. You know, that's what it is. That you need to see a doctor to help you with. What the majijila ngapheli angake sengwabona angamane lamanye abe khulu ukuthi aphele but nawe agcina aphelile. Kubeketela right treatment, seeing a doctor, that is very, very important. Over the counter, you know what? The other thing, bleaching. These things are easily accessible. These things they get to corner in reputable shops. The corner store la system bags asawuthenga lokho. Labantu ababhali nalokho uyableacha lokho uyabona lento because these companies know ukuthi these things are illegal. So ufike wena uyathenga ngokuthi usite dumisile hey lemvo lena nami kuyangikhanyisa kungiphethe kahle in the long run so kuyakudamage your skin. So if you can, it's always good to see a dermatologist to prescribe stuff that you can use for you. Let's have a safe for skin zakho ngoba kude umuntu ufuna ugcine saka permanent damage from ukuthi bekazama bleach.
Yeah, doctor. I think the moment ujela umuntu ukuthi akayebona a dermatologist, I think kunale perception yokuthi mhlambe don't need the treatment let duli like cannot afford the treatment. So kuba yini kahle kahle treatment and ithatha isikhathi esinganani nje depending on the size of the acne.
Kuyadependa ukuthi uma uresponda kanjani. The way I respond to treatment will be different from the way that you respond to treatment, and there's different types of acne. You know, it is not a one size fits all. Yashiyana le hlobo lamajiji. Yabo so thina siyagrade asibone ukuthi lo jiji leli lesikhumba lesi it's a treatment le kanjena. I always say people wear hair that cost 5,000, 10,000. I mean, but they will not pay to see a doctor. I think we just need to weigh. But the damage that we're seeing really, I've seen people with actual cancer, you know, from bleaching. If you use these bleaching things over the longest of time, cancer. Kuyabanga ukuthi kulimata isibindi ngoba kusoloko kutaba absorbed through the skin. Noma le kubangela kidney failure kusuka isikhathi lesithe yabona so limele itinso bese udalimata limele permanent. So limele isibindi ngoba ke absorbeka kancane la sikhumbeni. Kuyabanga ne cancer. I-cancer yesikhumba naleminye imihlobo ye-cancer yengadi nasengene emtimbeni. For vele nje asikurecommend kakhulu nalokujova imagine ukuthi wena every week sofuna uyojova every week sofuna uyojova every week sofuna uyojova kwente ngani la kulesibinzi sakho ngoba lo mjovo ufuna gayo isibinzi ufuna khishwe idinso you know emva lo imagine if like they say for example ngoba the fashionable thing now is glutathione and if you can afford it glutathione you see so ufuna impilo yakho phela it's you have to maintain Now so kwende vele impilo yakho nasokumuntu weglutathione yabona uqala ngemijovo so maintainer ngeliphilisi impilo yakho yonke what's happening to your kidneys what's happening to your liver you know so many things can go wrong so
okay yeah. Okay, so there's also these ones labasebenzisa tinsipho labatake from natural herbs labanye mhlambe basebenzisa wona lamaphilisi like from natural herbs so siyababona nje labanye vele bathengisa leti nsipho ingabe dona tingoti nato letakhiwe from natural herbs
maybe leto ngeke tibe ingoti kakhulu especially insipho ngoba angehlala kakhulu la sikhombeni sakho kodwa vele bese soyayigeza you see sekungaba iproblem ye allergy ukuthi okay ngoba kufakwe lokwanaloko and nangabe isikhumba sakho si sensitive so thuke wa allergy kuyo so insipho kakhulu angeke ize ukuniketa iproblem but imvoloso so inathile ngalokho sokungena la ngekhathi uyabona so inifule ngathi betatini so inifule ngathi betasibinzi nalokuthi you know like you were saying ukuthi into ifuna ibe approved the ingredient ingakanani la khathi i-research ngoba uma wenza le research le business is safe ngaphuma lesiveni khanze kusantakhele mina I didn't go through anything something that I've just made at home in my garage or in my kitchen embole khanze kusukuba ingodi ngoba kude lokugathela sikwakhiwe kahle yini
yeah nayilenye lemcoka dokotela uthi zenzawa ye sunscreen ekucaleni kunebamfuleyo khanze ukuthi sebayayengana because the thing that is at bona ku social media bayacoca ukuthi kumele sinyalo vele sale sigcobisa sunscreen every day kutokuvikela from aging bayisebenzisa as an anti-aging naloku khanya abahlale bakhanya so kuyendiwa yini lokuthi vele ucobise every day ezinje product yakho lefaka daily for purposes of anti-aging?
Yes. Okay. That basic things that are very important for your skin, other than going for bleaching, which we do not want, for the side effects that we have mentioned. There's many things that you can use to keep your skin even tone. Maybe it's not even more about utukhanya, it's about even tone. So sunscreen is very, very important. It's number one. It's number one in your skincare routine. What does it do? Like you're rightfully saying, it is anti-aging, and it will help you with even skin tone. Yeah, but so we use it there for those purposes, and of course to prevent you from cancer. As is cool, skin self-suspended pigment here and there. So just to minimize that, that we use sunscreen. So sunscreen is very important. Anti-aging, you know, it keeps your skin glowing, and as well as preventing you from cancer. The other thing that you can use to have an even tone, light, not like light, but just even nice tone, like you have, use vitamin C. So you can take your oral natural vitamin C as a supplement, or as a serum. You know, so there's many things, vitamin B5, niacinamide that you can use instead of using bleaching agents. Those things are going to keep your skin nice, you know, flawless, but without bleaching your skin.
All right. So, my experiences, doctor, that you have had with your clients or patients, rather, because njengoba ngisho ekuqaleni ukuthi labanye vele kuba bese kuba too emotional ngalokho solo labusoni yobathu yadibuka namajiji lamaningi bese baba frustrated sabathi khanza sebasebentisela ama products lawa ingabe mhlambe na udila nema patients akho kuye babe khona vele mhlambe labo lesebadinga vele emotional noma psychological help kubeni ukuthi bathi khanza sibane majiji isikhathi leside usitakala kanganani nomfloyo nje vele.
You know what, Shem? I think what we about LGG, maybe a teenager, even teenagers these days, affect us psychologically. How much more from Sala? I do not want to see people with the message. I don't. You know, people when they come to me, they're always frustrated. Shame, self-esteem, yeah, but they are depressed because of this condition. And then they tell me, though, they're like, I've tried everything under the sun. Okay, and then you sit and say, but what have you tried? She's tried something, like you say, something from an influencer on Instagram. It does not work like that, unfortunately. You need to see a doctor. There is help for my pimples, I swear to you. It's just a road that needs patience, you know, and just trusting the process. You know, there is help. There is help, you know, not from Instagram, from an influencer who's been paid to promote a product, from a, you know, professional. People spent 4 years studying dermatology. I mean, they can treat acne. Trust that.
Okay, also Gnalama herbs, doctor, because we also read about Lama home remedies, especially Maubuga Google back, there's you mix lemon, boyokati, nabo turmeric, fagebsweni, ingabelawo wona, wasebenzisa direct, you know, what makes it. We are guess very local.
You know what? There's a lot of things driving acne. You know, so if you do use those things, we're just going to use them on the skin. But yeah, but I mean, I don't see a problem with that. So long as you're not going to have an allergy reaction to it, there isn't a problem with that. You know, it's not a bleaching thing. I'm always saying, move somewhere a kishini, what a garage like wabuya wagniga yabo. Utendele nje wena, so long as one allergy Google 70 say it's working. I'm still yet to see that. They'll say I've tried it, you know, for this long, it's not working, you know. So using it in Octanda is not a problem, but treating your acne, please just see a specialist for that.
Okay. So Dr. Kokugcina nje ingabe mhlambe labafisa ukubona wena your availability esibhedlela utholakala kanjani? Do you need to make an appointment? Sinikete nje ukuthi vele masifuna sito kuwe as a dermatologist and kanjani?
Okay, unfortunately I work for a government hospital. There's a referral system. Patients get referred to me. So I just see patients that have been referred to me having passed the process of the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much, Dr. Mabunza. Kusingeta nje sithombe ngasto letimvo leti lesetshenziswa ama products lasetshenziswako ekuzama ukukhanyisa sikhumba yaveta ke lapha dokotela ukuthi in the long run vele ama side effects akhona and skin sakho singadamage. I think lokunyela kubalekile la kuvetile nje intsaba ukuthi i-sunscreen yes ungayigcobisa every day kuzama kudivikela ukuthi sikhumba sakho singasheshe sigugne ukuthi sihlale nje si clear si soft kepha ke ngabe ufuna ukuva kabandi ngamvakashela yena dokotela noma ngabe solo nenkinga ye-acne lesolo ingapheli uyagcizelela ukuthi bona dokotela akho khona ukubona inkinga yakho ukuthi isuka kuphi kahle kahle. Let's take a break now sibuya start esahlelo.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3# and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
welcome back to the program. We just had Dr. Mabunza, who is a dermatologist. Lo tsanza ke kuphuma lapha ehlelweni nje indzaba lemqoka nalungelela indzaba ye skin bleaching noma ke skin whitening noma what lo skin lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, indzaba I think lemqoka kakhulu, but nje siyabona ukuthi so isongile la kutsenini kuma recommendations. There's only one key recommendation ukuthi umuntu lo ufuna kungathi unetinkinga tesikhumba sakhe akaye kuyobona i dermatologist ngoba bantu laba labatfundzele letinto letinto temaskin awangayi nje kuyobuka i-Instagram influencer lobhadaliwe noma uye kuyawubuka ku-internet ngoba the thing could be edited. Yeah, the internet kuthi kulikhuni ukuthola info verified, so the best thing to do ngoba njengoba shilo nje ukuthi ungatkhanza unabo cancer, some of these things dihamba to your liver. So I think kumqoka kakhulu kuyithatha leyo message leyo, especially to bosses bethu siyathi ukuthi is the female community that ikhanza ithengabo over the counter, skin lightening products. So siyathembela ukuthi bayithethe leyo advice leyo.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. It's 1 minute before 8 o'clock. Sisivele siliphethe lapho hlelo lethu. Sanibona kusasa. Have a good day.